Cordelia's following words were cut short by the slap that resonated across her face. Tears sprung in her eyes, and she bit her lips. "You incompetent fool!" A tall woman with fiery hair hissed as she grabbed Cordelia's shoulders. She shook her, and Cordelia's hands dangled at her sides. "Why did you have to bring your smelly self in here when I was in a meeting with an important client? Who gave you the audacity?" The woman let go of Cordelia and flung her to the floor. Cordelia gasped at the pain that shot through her lower leg. She crouched on the floor, trying to hide the tears rolling down her cheeks. I didn't know, a voice in her head kept saying. It was a voice she could not let out, no matter how hard she tried to speak. The boss stalked towards her, and still seated, Cordelia backed away, her skirt scraping the floor. "Tina, why don't you calm down? It's not like her coming into the meeting made a negative impact. Sure, it was awkward at first, but we got the contract signed," a man in the corner of the office said from his armchair. "Oh, would you shut your trap, Tony? What do you know?" Tina turned to Cordelia again and pulled her up from the ground by her hair. Cordelia's scream rent the air. "Shut it! You are fired, got it? Get out of my office and don't you dare return. I don't want to see your slimy and ugly face again, you fool." "Please," Cordelia stuttered, tears rolling down her cheeks. Tina's reply to her appeal was another slap across the cheek. "How dare you talk to me? Get out of here!" Tina shoved the sobbing Cordelia out of her office. Leaning against the outside wall, Cordelia heard her mutter, "Good riddance." Sobbing quietly, Cordelia made for walking away. She winced and fell to the floor. Her hand rubbed her ankle, and her tears fell. Jobless and injured, those were the only thoughts in her head. "Oh, look who we have here. It's the big crying baby." "Did Tina let you go?" someone asked, causing Cordelia to raise her head. Her eyes flashed with pain. She was the one that had caused this situation. How could she laugh at her? How could you? Cordelia stuttered through her tears. Whenever she was emotionally stressed, it was unfortunate that she stuttered. "Oh, shut up. Do you honestly think you are befitting to be Tina's assistant? I mean, you were so dumb to fall for my lie. I told you she needed you, and you instantly went to her office. A fool like you deserve nothing good," Cordelia's colleague, Kelly, said as she flipped her hair. Do you mind position?" Cordelia cried. "Oh, don't be a naive fool. Do you think I did this because I covet your position? I fooled you because I simply cannot stand you. Enjoy your jobless life, you idiot." Kelly kicked Cordelia's hurt ankle as she shoved past her, and Cordelia cried. She managed to take in deep breaths after a few minutes, and she stood up. It did not take Cordelia long to pack her few belongings into a box. She sobbed harder as she held her favorite mug, her last present from her mother before she died. "It's going to be fine," she whispered as she limped out of the building. Cordelia spared one last look at the building before she started down the sidewalk. Someone pushed her and the box fell in her hands. "Watch where you're going, bitch!" the person shouted. Cordelia gasped and fell to her knees. She pulled out the broken shards of her favorite mug, and her lips trembled from unshed tears. Why, she whispered. "Why? Are you coming or what?" a voice called to Cordelia after what seemed like hours to her. The bus heading to her part of the city was in front of her. The driver, a friendly man called Pete, was waving. She scrambled to her feet and winced. Bedraggled, Cordelia made her way into the bus. Her sadness blinded her as she did not see the person waving at her until a hand grabbed her. "Please don't hurt me," she cried, her eyes shut. "Cordelia? What happened to you?" a familiar voice asked. Cordelia's eyes flew open, and she saw her only friend in the world, Bree. They had followed the same bus circuit for a long time and had become close. "Hi, Bree," she whispered. "I can't believe all that happened to you in one day." "Indeed, when it rains, it pours. So what will you do now? You needed that job," Bree told Cordelia minutes after sharing her story. Cordelia's head fell. "I guess we will have to survive on Kyle's salary until I get another job. I'm sure Kyle will understand." "He will." Bree rolled her eyes. "That guy mistreated you when you were jobless and when you got a job. He will never let you keep a dime. What makes you think he'll be understanding this time?" "Because he loves me, Bree. He does. Cordelia said softly. You are so naive, Cordelia. A man who loves you will not treat you like shit. I have told you several times to leave him. You've been facing bullying at that job for so long, and even when you returned home with scars, he never inquired why. Is that a man that loves you? Everyone can see he does not love you. You are the only one who thinks he does. He loves me, Cordelia whispered. Bree shook her head. My daily dose of advice is over. Take care of yourself, Cordelia. Thanks, Bree, Cordelia muttered. We will go have some coffee and cake, my treat. I won't let you go home feeling blue. Thanks, Bree. Cordelia smiled a little. Alongside Bree, Cordelia trudged to the apartment building where she lived. Across the street, she saw an older woman pushing a cart. Don't do it, Cordelia. Come on. Money was tight before, and it's going to be super tight from now on, Bree hissed under her breath. I have to help. She is in a worse situation than me. I have to, Cordelia told her friend as she hurried to the homeless woman. She returned with a smile, and Bree grabbed her arm. How much did you give her? Cordelia stuttered. 20. Oh, for crying out loud! You are too kind and helpful for your own good, Cordelia. Struggling people like you and I cannot afford to be all giving and kind. How many times do I have to tell you that? I don't have to be swimming in money to help those who need my help, Bree. Cordelia smiled at her friend. Bree sighed and shook her head. I can only hope that your kind heart will help you, but then I think of the fact that you are still with Kyle, and I doubt it will. It is that kindness of yours he is taking advantage of. Bye, Bree. Cordelia waved at her friend and hurried into the old building. The moment she entered her apartment, Cordelia knew that something was wrong, but she could hear muffled sounds from the bedroom. Slowly, she followed them. She gasped when she saw clothes strewn at the entrance of the door. Her hands trembled as she reached for the door. Kyle? She stammered as tears fell. Entangled in bed with Kyle was Kelly, the woman who had gotten her fired just hours ago. How could you? Cordelia cried. Kyle shrugged and kissed Kelly, who unashamedly lay back in bed. It was about time you found out. You're worthless, Cordelia. I can't keep wasting my time with you. We are done. I deserve better. But I love you, Cordelia wailed. Whatever. He does not love you back. Please leave already. Honey, are the divorce paper readies yet? Oh, yeah. Cordelia, you'll find them on the table in the kitchen. Kyle waved her away. But, Cordelia cried. Kelly groaned and jumped from the bed. She threw a robe and rushed at Cordelia, shoving her to the floor. Get out of here, you dirty pig! Cordelia fell and hit her head on the floor. She groaned and curled into a ball as pain shot through her head and stomach. Oh, just great. This nuisance is bleeding, were the last words she heard before she drifted away. It was her husband's voice. Cordelia woke up in the hospital a week later to find the divorce papers beside her bed. I am sorry, you lost your baby. You were 6 weeks pregnant and, The doctor said that Cordelia had already covered her head while crying silently. She had lost her husband and a baby she had not known she was carrying. She had been longing for a kid for so long. All she wanted to do at that moment was die. Bree had been right. Kyle had done nothing but hurt her. She had been too naive and had let herself be fooled. It's going to be fine, Cordelia. It will be. Bree patted her shoulder. It won't be okay, Cordelia cried. I never catch a break. Just when I get a glimpse of happiness, sadness abounds. Cordelia wailed louder, and all her friend could do was hug her. Hey, stop being a slowpoke and clean that up already, the beefy man hissed at Cordelia. She nodded and shoved the mop faster. As soon as he left, she wiped the sweat off her brow and sighed. She looked around her. It had been 2 months since she started working as a janitor in the office building. Life there was not significantly different from the life she had experienced before. Still, she needed the money. She could do nothing. The insults, the shoves, the assault, she was not strong enough to fight back. Hey, stupid, take out the trash! The beefy man, who was the office manager on the floor she was working on, hissed at her. Cordelia grabbed the garbage can and hurried out of the building. She froze in the alley beside the building where she saw an older man being accosted by 2 men working there. They had knives pointed at him. Cordelia turned around, but then stopped. She was trembling because she was afraid, but she shook her head. She had to help him. She pulled out her phone and quickly dialed 911. Please come now, she whispered. You fucking bitch! She felt the knife's sharpness as it pierced through her just as blood pooled at the front of her shirt. The sounds of sirens surrounded her as she fell into the darkness. "You're up! Thank goodness! I'm glad you're okay." Cordelia blinked and tried to sit up. She winced, and a pair of strong arms held her down. "You need to rest." "Who are you?" she asked the tall man with kind eyes who was standing beside her. "You saved my life, miss. Thank you. Your friend Bree has told me everything you've been through. Despite it all, you stuck your neck out for me." "No, it's okay. The stranger shook his head. "I will help you, Cordelia. First, we are getting you a proper apartment and a good job befitting a good person like you. You are now under my care, and you won't want or cry. It'll be okay." Thank you, Cordelia sobbed as Bree hugged and the stranger patted her shoulder.
The first day of spring turned out to be extremely damp and dank. The same gray and boring was the life of a young woman who looked out of the window longingly this early morning. Elizabeth was sitting on the sagging sofa in the tiny kitchen, drinking cold tea and finishing a piece of yesterday's apple pie. Today, she turned 31 years old, and this simple breakfast on the kitchen table was all she could afford at the moment. Before blowing out the candle, she thought about what to wish for and whispered aloud the cherished words, "I want life in our family to get better." The cake seemed tasteless to the birthday girl, and the tea tasteless. It used to be different, and it was not at all about the variety of apples or cinnamon. Elizabeth was widowed a year ago. Her husband Steve was knocked down by a pedestrian crossing by some scoundrel when he was returning home from work. It was in the evening, and none of the random passers-by remembered the car's license plate number. Elizabeth found out about the tragedy in the morning when she returned from the night shift. They'd had a happy marriage. The lack of money and eternal debts did not prevent the spouses from sincerely loving each other. They'd been together since high school. The awkward junior in high school named Steve immediately liked a classmate who transferred to the school from another school. For her sake, Steve fell in love with reading books, became interested in classical music, and became interested in sports. Now, it was difficult to recognize Steve because love transformed him. Trying to match his beloved, Steve began to take part in the social life of the school, carefully prepared homework, and stayed up late in the library. But that's not how Steve won Elizabeth's heart. She was always there at a difficult moment, and Elizabeth quickly got used to the fact that she could always rely on him. Unbeknownst to herself, she fell in love with this shy young man who on the day they met could not connect two words. After finishing school, Steve and Elizabeth decided not to break up and entered the same university together. But the trouble is, Steve couldn't keep up his grades and joined the army. Elizabeth was not at all frightened by the difficulties that arose, and she firmly decided to wait for her beloved. The year flew by unnoticed, and when Steve paid his debt to the motherland, he and Elizabeth got married. 9 months later, they had a new baby, who they named Andrew. After a while, Elizabeth was forced to transfer to the correspondence department, and Steve got a job as a handyman at a construction site. At first, everything went like clockwork, and the young family had enough money. They even managed to save money. Everything collapsed in an instant when Steve lost a high-paying job. It turned out that his boss was illegally building a housing complex in the city center. The news that Elizabeth's mother Margaret was seriously ill finally upset their family. Margaret was diagnosed with cancer, and the woman needed an urgent operation. All the savings of their young family went to her treatment and rehabilitation. She even had to sell a house in the village where the family liked to spend weekends. Fortunately, the surgery helped, and Margaret soon went on the mend. But then a new disaster happened, from which their family could not recover. The sudden death of Steve undermined the emotional state of Elizabeth, who did not know how to live on. Together with her husband, confidence in the future finally died in her. Elizabeth held on only for the sake of her son and old mother, who were always there and supported her, and now she was sitting in the kitchen, sipping tea and thinking about how worthless life is. For many, worthlessness is the lack of money, career, personal life, and so on. But for Elizabeth, worthlessness consisted in a lack of purpose in life. Her aspirations and desires were shattered and broken in a crushing way on the day when she saw her husband's lifeless face. The woman hoped to the last that this was a terrible joke, a stupid medical mistake, and her Steve was actually alive. He will enter the house as before, pick up his son in his arms, and kiss his wife. A single tear rolled down her cheek from the old memories of a once happy life. Now the woman dreamed only of a good life. No, not for herself at all. Andrew and the old mother. That's who Elizabeth was thinking about in the first place. This thought was firmly rooted in her mind a couple of days ago after meeting with a classmate. She met Nancy quite by chance at the supermarket, where she ran in for a minute to get milk and fresh buns with raisins for Andrew. For a moment, she admired the woman who was walking towards her. Her confident, calm gait and the click of her heels made many men turn around. But the woman didn't seem to notice anyone around her. She was concentrating on choosing cheese, fruit, and a jar of caviar, putting the products in her basket. Elizabeth did not immediately recognize the stylishly dressed woman as a mischievous, ungainly girl with whom she sat at the same desk all her school years. No, Nancy was not a universally recognized beauty like Elizabeth, but there was something in her gaze that attracted men like a magnet. Styled hair, scarlet lipstick, expensive perfume, gold jewelry, and the latest iPhone model literally screamed about her solvency. With her manicured fingers, she traced the label on the expensive champagne, intently studying what was written. Then she neatly added the bottle to her purchases. Elizabeth felt embarrassed for her appearance, disheveled hair and dark circles under her eyes. She hurried past so as not to catch Nancy's eye, but accidentally caught the woman with her elbow. "Excuse me," Elizabeth apologized as she walked by, praying to all the gods that Nancy wouldn't recognize her. "It's okay, it happens," Nancy answered mechanically. But after looking closely at the face of a random passerby, she suddenly made a discovery for herself. "Elizabeth? Elizabeth Wilson, it's you. How many years? How many winters? Listen, I'm so glad to see you. Let's sit in a cafe and chat. Oh, only first, to the register. Otherwise, the guard is already looking suspiciously at us," Nancy hastily said in a voice that did not tolerate rejection. Her nimble fingers had already wrapped around Elizabeth's arm, and she was being led to the exit of the supermarket. "Hi, Nancy. You're still the same chatterbox." Elizabeth laughed sincerely for the first time in a long time. After ordering a latte and a tiramisu for two, Nancy talked incessantly about herself and her life. It turned out that she has her own business. She helped wealthy people find good servants who would carefully clean the mansions and keep quiet about what was happening outside their walls. She always liked to talk, and Elizabeth loved to listen. This was the secret of their school friendship. "Yes, that's enough about me. Tell me, how are you doing? Married? Are there any children?" "I was married, and now I'm a widow. An accident a year ago. My husband was hit by a car. Now I live with my mother and son Andrew. He's a smart boy growing up, and he will go to school this year." "God, I'm sorry. I didn't know." Nancy apologized hurriedly, even though she was a giggler, a gossip girl, and even a flirt. But no human emotion was foreign to her. "And are you working?" "No way. Without work experience, they'll only let me clean the floors," Elizabeth replied sharply. Floors. Now that's an idea." Nancy pondered. "Let me help you with the work. I have one customer here, and he urgently needs a maid, and as luck would have it, all the girls are busy." "Well, I don't even know if I can handle it." "Of course you can, because you've been awfully clean since childhood. Besides, he pays a lot of money, and your son is going to school this year, and your mother is old, you said yourself. So think carefully. You will work for a couple of months, and you will run around beauty salons and buy toys for the child." "Well, Nancy, you can even persuade a deaf person." "Okay, I agree," Elizabeth replied, thinking that a good salary would not hurt her in any way. "Believe me, This job will be like a breath of fresh air for you. It's a pleasure to put things in order in such houses. Crystal antiques, expensive paintings are everywhere, and if you try, you'll get some poor guy. Just choose prettier and richer, so you will become a hostess." "What are you saying? After Steve died, I don't even want to look at other men." "That's stupid. You are a young, beautiful woman. You also need to think about yourself. And your son still needs a father. For a boy, the example of a serious and accomplished man is extremely important." "Maybe you're right. But I'm not ready for a relationship yet." "Oh, Lizzie, what would you do without me?" "Well, never mind. We will quickly direct your life for the better. How nice it is to feel like a fairy godmother." "Nancy, but I have no one to leave my son to. Mom hasn't been feeling well lately, and it will be hard for her to sit with him. What to do? Advise me." "I will talk to the customer and explain the whole situation. Perhaps he will allow you to move with your son." "Nan, you're great. I'm so grateful to you," Elizabeth exclaimed happily, feeling that life was beginning to improve. The next few days were agonizing, and waiting was the hardest for the young woman. Not knowing what to do with herself, she was rushing around the apartment like a tiger in a cage. Elizabeth already began to think that there was no mating, and the sorceress named Nancy she just dreamed. When the phone rang in her apartment a few days later, Elizabeth rushed to the phone. Her whole life depended on the decision at the other end of the wire. "Well, Lizzie, congratulations to you. Now you're officially employed. Pack your things. You and your son are moving into John Clark's country house today, and tomorrow morning you start your direct duties." "Thank you, Nancy. From our whole family, thank you." "Don't thank me, don't. I should be thanking you. I've been looking for a friend like you, so come on, don't be sour. But get ready as soon as possible. John Clark doesn't like to wait." But Elizabeth didn't hear anything more. She was like a little girl floating in the clouds. Hurriedly packing her things, she circled around the room and hummed. "Lizzie, it's quite unexpected to see you in such a mood. Has something happened?" Elizabeth's mother asked, sincerely rejoicing for her daughter, who has never smiled since the day her husband died. "Mommy dear, life is getting better. I got a job." "Oh, I'm so happy for you, my daughter. I finally see you having fun. Trust me, Steve wanted you to be happy again. I loved your late husband like my own son, but he left us, and it was very painful for me to watch you depressed." "I'm sorry, Mom. I promise I won't hurt you," Lizzie agreed, realizing that she was bringing pain to her family with prolonged suffering. When a black foreign car picked up Elizabeth and Andrew in the evening, Elizabeth felt like Cinderella, who finally had a chance to go to the royal ball. The country mansion of J. Clark's was like a small medieval castle. A huge park, a small pond, shady alleys, along which it must be so pleasant to walk in good weather, drew Elizabeth's attention. The big gray building in which he and his son were to live did not look creepy and unfriendly at all. The polite and courteous owner of the mansion, a man slightly over 50 years old, was already expecting a new assistant around the house. The former maid could no longer handle her duties for health reasons. After learning that Elizabeth has a child, the man did not mind at all that she moved with her son. Despite his wealth and success in business, he was extremely unhappy. In his youth, he lost the woman he loved, with whom he felt so happy. Envious bridemaids had slandered him, and the bride believed every word. Pride surged in John's heart, and he did not even try to keep his beloved. Years passed, and success and fame quickly came to him, but real, sincere love no longer knocked on his door. He got married twice, but all in vain. None of his wives could give him a long-awaited heir to whom he could transfer all his affairs. Disappointed in women, he plunged headfirst into work, and when he woke up, he realized that he had wasted my best years. He had houses, apartments, bank accounts, but did not have the most important thing, a big, strong, and loving family, which he dreamed of so much. Lizzie and her son immediately took root in his house. Children's laughter, the patter of Andrew's little feet, and Elizabeth's friendly smile filled the old mansion with light and warmth. Elizabeth cooked well and spoiled everyone with fragrant pastries on weekends. In his spare time, John was happy to tinker with the boy, imagining himself as a caring grandfather. He told him interesting stories about his travels, built a toy railway, and even performed the role of a horse, riding a little prankster on his back. From the outside, they looked like a real family. Yes, but it was impossible. Elizabeth's mother always said that her father was a pilot and crashed during an exercise. But one incident made Elizabeth doubt the truthfulness of her mother's words. One day, while cleaning the office, Elizabeth found her childhood photo on the desk. There could be no mistake. The card depicted a girl with an upturned freckled nose and dressed in a pretty canary-colored dress. But why is her picture here? Thinking about it, she got all worked up. Talking about his youth, John Clark mentioned a lover named Margaret, with whom he was divorced by a villainous fate. Was that woman her mother, and Lizzie his daughter? Thoughts did not give her rest, and then Elizabeth decided to invite her mother to the mansion, citing the fact that Andrew missed his beloved grandmother. The very next day, Margaret appeared in the house. At that moment, she still had no idea what kind of surprise fate would give her. "Mommy, tell me the whole truth. Who is my father, and did he die?" "Lizzie, why such questions? I've told you 100 times that he was a pilot." "But then what is my photo doing in John Clark's office?" "I see you've turned pale. You know that name, don't you?" "What did you have in common? Is he really my father?" "Daughter, calm down. Since you know everything, I'll tell you the truth. We really were a wonderful couple once. But after he cheated on me, our wedding didn't take place. I left him and then realized that I was pregnant. Out of anger, I wanted to get rid of the child, but at the last moment I changed my mind. Yes, Lizzie, he's your real father and Andrew's grandfather, but he is a terrible person, and it's better that you never see each other again." "Mom, I just found my father and you want to deprive me of him?" Elizabeth said angrily. "How could you hide the truth from me? He wasn't cheating on you at all. It's just that your girlfriends were jealous of your happiness, so they made it up, and you believed it. Fate itself brought us together." "Actually, it's not fate," a man's voice came from behind. "A year ago, I found out that my ex-lover secretly gave birth to a child from me. I've been looking for you all this time, Lizzie. And believe me, our meeting is not accidental. I am incredibly proud to have such a wonderful daughter and grandson. And you, Margot, forgive me. I was really loyal to you. I was young, stupid, and did not appreciate his happiness. Years have passed, but I still love you. Maybe we still have a chance for happiness. We may not be young anymore, but we have many wonderful moments ahead of us." "Darling, how stupid we were. I also love you more than life," Margaret replied, snuggling up to his sturdy shoulder. That's how fate gave two lovers a chance to be happy again, and Elizabeth has learned a simple truth for herself. There is no need to be afraid to love and to be loved. Love does not tolerate timidity. After all, tomorrow may never come. And she also knew for sure that Steve was looking at her from heaven and blessing her to try to be happy again. As soon as Tina's husband died, a whole series of trials collapsed on her family. Tina had to raise her daughter Kira on her own, delve into the family business, and solve all the problems that her husband, Alex, used to deal with. Not only was Alex's death a devastating blow for Tina, but her daughter's personal life began to bring trouble. Tina did not have time to raise her daughter, so the bright feelings of love became strong for Tina. Tina considers herself the happiest in the world. She would have a loving husband. They had been together since September when they, first-year students, were sent to help harvest the harvest. Hardworking and dexterous, Alex, who immediately relieved the girls from the suffering of carrying buckets with beets and potatoes, was liked by many then. However, he did not openly show signs of sympathy to anyone. Knowing from his father and grandfather the tricks of life in weather conditions, the boy spoiled everything with incredibly delicious food. Several times, with the permission of the mentor, he and several other students went fishing, and then the chefs of the local canteen prepared fragrant fish soup. Much later, when he and Tina became young specialists and even celebrated their 5-year wedding anniversary, he, in response to the news of the long-awaited pregnancy, admitted that he fell in love with her as soon as he saw her. "You know, my dear, When I was looking at the field then, the girls try not to overexert themselves, and you, so focused but not gloomy, you carefully fold this beetroot, even if you need to shake off the dirt a little. I worked with some kind of joy, and when I smiled at some joke I told, I realized that I didn't need anyone else. Tina went on maternity leave from the position of a design engineer, and Alex realized that his salary at the plant would clearly not be enough for the family. Together with his friends, he got involved in the business development. Of all the viable options, the companions chose to trade in equipment necessary for active recreation and sports. Enthusiastic young people were able to attract the attention of fishermen, athletes, as well as lovers of hiking and long trips to nature. One store was followed by another. The partners expanded the variety of goods, looked for dependable firms, and then Alex turned into Mr. Alex for his subordinates and opened a workshop for the production of goods for tourism. His own experience was useful to him, and although not many believed in his success, the business turned out to be profitable. The family didn't need anything. Beautiful daughter Kira was pleased with her father's success at school, and she went to music with pleasure. She did a little choreography for the soul. Tina, realizing that combining work, which took an hour and a half twice a day to commute to, meant little time in the status of a housewife, and then, with the full support of her husband, opened a shop with sewing goods. The family could not be counted as super rich, but material prosperity was stable. Wealth, even fortune, appeared suddenly. Once upon a time, Alex, rather from some instinct than after a rational miscalculation, bought several suburban plots for almost nothing, and then was able to successfully sell them. So he got another kind of earnings, and in addition to all his studies, he opened a real estate agency. Happy years flew by with the blink of an eye. From poor young professionals, Tina and Alex had turned into very wealthy people. We built a compact but cozy house, located so that the city is just around the corner. Now Kira's daughter had become a student. They bought her an apartment so that when she gets married, the family would not have any problems with housing. Everything had changed, but the feelings of Tina and Alex remained as tender as before, and love in general, as it seemed to them, has become even stronger. However, 2 years ago, Tina suddenly became a widow. Alex lost control on the icy road and died on the scene. Tina vaguely remembered that dark period. She tried to hold on for the sake of her daughter, who adored her father, and, in memory of her beloved husband, tried to preserve his trading and real estate business. She had to delve into a huge number of details and nuances, but such a full load helped to distract her to such an extent that she simply did not have the strength to mourn her beloved. She sometimes had the thought that now she had to pay for years of happiness. Tina sometimes moped, and during such periods did not even go outside the precinct. Fortunately, it is possible to keep an eye on the state of the business remotely, and there is always work on Earth. So, Tina worked in the garden, then in the greenhouse, finding at least some comfort in physical activities. The only people she has always had, of course, daughter Kira, Mary, her husband's younger sister, and her family. The sister-in-law was almost 17 years younger, but they communicated perfectly, having long become not only friends, but also remarkably close. During one of the meetings, when Mary decided to give herself a break from household chores and came to her brother's widow, Tina confessed to her, "You know, Mary, life probably spoiled me for a reason up to the age of 46. Most likely it was not a gift of fate, but her oversight. Now she decided to put up a severe bill for everything. Sometimes it's a sinful thing to think that I don't want anything else. That's just Kira holding, but you, I can't leave you." Don't think like that, Tina. We all feel bad without Alex, but he would definitely be unhappy with your thoughts. Moreover, Kira needs you now, the wrong one, more than ever. She has become quite an adult with us, a bride. Yesterday I saw her with a guy in a cafe. Her eyes were shining, her face was shining, a real beauty. So, my dear, it is probably necessary for you and me to prepare for a new joy. Mary's words hit Tina in the heart. How did she not notice any changes in her daughter? And after all, as Tina understood with annoyance now, she, as a mother, had to ask for a long time why her daughter suddenly began to return home much later. Yes, Mary, it looks like I'm a worthless mom. In fact, Kira also began to dress up longer before leaving the house. A week ago, I asked for my favorite perfume. It's awkward because she didn't come for perfume. She probably wanted to talk to me. And I waved my hand towards the dressing table saying, "Take what you want and don't bother me." Don't blame yourself, Tina. I think Kira doesn't take offense at you. She's a smart girl here. It's a pity that she is late. We would have asked her about this guy together with you. Well, I have to run. It's a pity, you know. Let's meet on Friday at 7. Take your men and come to us for the whole weekend. We, like Alex, left and we're not going to barbecue with a bathhouse. Well done, Tina. Great idea. I will warn my sons and my husband not to plan anything. We'll stay together and maybe Kira will invite her beau. They would have arranged a visit for him. Tina would have been happy to talk longer, but a taxi had already arrived for Mary, and she hurried back to her playful 3-year-old twin sons, whom she left had her husband to look after. Tina, handing her sister-in-law souvenirs for the boys, sat down to think about the upcoming conversation with her daughter. Tina, of course, realized that her wonderful daughter had grown up a long time ago. There is nothing unnatural in the appearance of Kira's beau, because when else to fall in love than at the age of 20? Once she and Alex were worried that their beautiful schoolgirl daughter would get her head turned by some classmate, but the girl somehow took the issue of admission to an interesting university very seriously. While many of her peers were already starting to meet guys in an adult way, Kira was gnawing on the granite of science, and she also helped Tina with the choice of fabrics and unusual accessories. And I must say, most often the daughter's extraordinary ideas turned out to be successful. Alex always admired Kira's diligence, and in conversations with his wife noted, "Well done, Kira," because she knew that he would have paid for her studies at any institute, and she herself decided to make her way. Memories of her husband again touched Tina's emotional wound, and she, immersed in unhappy thoughts, did not even notice how the front door slammed. Tina broke her concentration when Kira entered the kitchen, who asked in an excited voice, "Mom, why are you sitting in the dark? Is everything okay?" Tina started up, and despite the protests of her daughter, who said that she would warm up the food, she began to set the table. Tina watched with emotion as the hungry girl ate her dinner with an appetite and restrained herself with all her might not to ask Kira who she was dating. At the table, Tina asked, "I invited Mary and the guys to us for the weekend. Let's come up with something interesting and delicious besides the wings." Tina hoped that her daughter would take the opportunity to talk about her boyfriend, and the idea came true. Kira's cheeks turned slightly red, and she confessed, "Mom, I agreed to go on a date with a guy on Saturday. We met him at Catherine's when she was celebrating her driver's license." Tina smiled encouragingly, but did not ask anything, so as not to scare off the moment of frankness, and Kira continued, "His name is Stephen Kirsten. He is a cousin of the guy Bethany, so don't frown at Mommy. I've made all the inquiries. A good guy. He works. He has his own furniture store. More precisely, as Bethany said, the store belongs to her parents, according to the documents, but they entrusted it to Stephen 6 months ago. He is 30 years old, was married, but they broke up. He has no children." Did I find out all the necessary information? Tina felt pride and a certain challenge in her daughter's voice, but she bit her tongue in time, deciding not to quarrel and not to teach her grown-up blood. And with the most joyful intonation praised, just a good girl. If you want, you can invite Stephen to dinner with us on Saturday, but of course I won't say a word of reproach to you if you prefer a date. Mommy, you're just lovely. I'll probably invite Stephen, but I'm afraid he'll think I'm pushing him to propose. He seems to be making hints to me, saying that he has never met such a girl and would like to spend his whole life next to me. No, he'll definitely think I'm rushing him, so most likely I'll just quickly run off on a date. Then I'll come home to chat with Mary and tinker with the boys. I hope you'll persuade them to stay overnight, right? Tina smiled. Of course, with an overnight stay. But if you don't want to push Stephen to a decisive act, then probably you really shouldn't invite him. Wait, take a closer look at him. There's no hurry. So far, can you at least show me his picture? They probably took selfies. Of course now. Kira sat down next to her mother on the sofa and handed her smartphone. Tina flipped through the photos and realized that she did not like her daughter's boyfriend at all. No, outwardly he looked quite neat, even over the top. In one of the pictures, Tina even noticed that the man's nails were polished. But the way he looked at Kira did not suit her categorically. The negative emotions were subconscious, but Tina was simply convinced that Stephen was not in love with her daughter at all. In the morning, after Kira rushed off to study, Tina called her sister-in-law and briefly recounted the conversation with her daughter. Tina tried to explain her doubts. You know, Mary, he seems to be smiling in the pictures, but his eyes are empty. Or there was a frame where Kara does not cling, and he looks at her with such a malicious smile of a winner, a nasty type. Although, according to my daughter, he is very courteous, so I invited him to visit. Together, we will be able to ask him about everything and consider what kind of bird he is. No, Mary, Kira's right. He can also go all in, make an offer in front of everyone. It seems like so that he could do it flawlessly. Well, try to find out more about him. After discussing the problem a little more, the relatives said goodbye. Tina did not stop thinking about her daughter's fate, and the woman had an idea. She found out the address of Stephen's furniture store and ordered a taxi to its location. While waiting for the car, Tina dressed up in the clothes in which she worked in the garden, but did not have time to wash and went to the salon in the form of just a lady with low income. The pretty saleswoman Helga, who would have been more suited to the profession of a model, tried to restrain herself at the sight of a not-too-presentable visitor, but she could not completely hide her disappointment. Tina walked around the salon and then asked the girl, "Excuse me, Helga, can you get some kind of discount on this bedroom furniture?" The beauty's face became haughty as she said, "I'm sorry, but we don't have discounts. These are the rules of our store." Tina pretended not to notice the contempt and asked, "If possible, arrange a meeting with the owner for me. I will personally ask for a discount." After some bickering, Helga stepped aside. The girl, as Tina guessed, called Stephen's reception. And a few minutes later, she informed Tina, "Go straight down the hall, then turn right. There will be a reception room. Mr. Kirsten is busy right now. Wait to get through, but I'll tell you right away, it's unlikely you'll get a discount. It's better to go to another store. We have a salon of Italian furniture, and almost all models are exclusive." Tina thanked the girl and went to the reception room, which turned out to be empty. The door to the store owner's office was ajar, but a few minutes later, a slightly disheveled secretary of no less model type than the seller came out. "Hello," Tina said politely. "Can I see Mr. Kirsten about the discount?" "Oh, I don't even know." The girl turned on her heels and looked into the office from which she had just left and asked, "There is a visitor here about a discount. Let her come to you." A loud baritone voice replied, "Not now, baby. You know, I need to come to my senses and make the coffee stronger. Tell them to wait." It became quite obvious to Tina that Kira's boyfriend had just been having fun right at the workplace, but she still decided to look at Stephen to get an idea of how he behaves with people. She had to wait for almost an hour, during which the secretary did not bother to offer her either tea or even water. Communication with Stephen also did not work out. As soon as the secretary, apparently having read the message from the boss on the computer, allowed Tina to go to the director, he barely heard the request for a discount, rudely interrupted the woman, "I don't do handouts. Go to the market somewhere. There's plywood furniture and just for a purse like yours." Tina returned home in an unbelievably bad mood. She really didn't like the fact that when dating Tina, Stephen is not at all shy about maintaining a relationship with his secretary. In addition, the manner of his conversation with potential buyers clearly indicated that the business was unlikely to last long. By connecting friends, Tina found out that the man had brought the furniture store to the brink of ruin in 6 months, and besides, he had large debts after the closure of his business. However, recently he began to ask creditors for an exceedingly small delay, explaining that he had seduced a rich girl. Very soon, he would have corrected his financial situation and would return everything with interest. Tina tried to explain to Kira what Stephen was like and had to persuade the girl to bring him to a family evening on Saturday. "Daughter, I wish you only the best, so invite this person and you will see his true character." The spectacle really turned out to be enchanting. Stephen, seeing the elegant Tina, bowed, and even stretched out his hand to her, and then, listening to the voice, recognized the visitor who asked for a discount. Tina invited him and said, "Well, Mr. Kirsten, come in and look at my plywood furniture." Losing his composure, the unlucky boyfriend left the store, almost sprawling on a flower bed. Even Kira couldn't help but smile as she watched Stephen flee. Tina was glad that she was able to save her from a big mistake, and Kira would definitely meet a decent man who would love her. Many years have passed since Dick's father left him with his mother, but this trauma remained forever in his soul. Now, he remembered his mother's tears, her confusion, misunderstanding, and wondering how to move on. As for him, he was experiencing such a difficult feeling of disconnection from reality because of what had happened. He couldn't believe that Dad could do this just because he liked some other woman. Dick had replayed this episode in his head many times in adulthood, but he did not change his opinion. He will be a good father to his children, and they will not have to go through what he went through, and a good husband for the one he chooses to marry. When he first saw Melanie, he immediately thought that she was the one. But until the moment of their wedding, several more years passed. And now, remembering all the years they had lived together, he thought that fulfilling the promise made to himself was not difficult at all. After all, he loved his family very much. This year, he will definitely try not to forget about their wedding anniversary. Melanie was finishing her makeup in front of her favorite dressing table with quick movements. There were only finishing touches left, but she was already a little late for work. She wasn't particularly worried. Anyway, the boss was always late. If you came in 10 to 15 minutes late, no one would notice. The apartment was unusually quiet, all because Dick had already taken the children to kindergarten. He was only in the office for lunch today. Early in the morning, Melanie noticed that for some reason, Dick had grabbed a bunch of keys for their country house from the closet. She accidentally saw him hurriedly put them in his pocket. "Why do you need those keys to our country house?" she asked. Dick hesitated. I'll drop in there before work," Dick finally said. "I left some tools there, and a colleague asked me to borrow them. Can you fill up the pool at the same time? We will go there this weekend, and the water will have already warmed up," Melanie suggested and hurried to the kitchen. The children had to be woken up already. She wanted to have time to drink a cup of coffee in peace and quiet. "No, I can't fill up the pool. I'm literally going to run there for 10 minutes, tools and back," Dick said. "Well, we'll fill it up together this weekend," Melanie sighed. The morning went on as usual, and the children, as usual, did not want to wake up and go to the garden. Melanie gave the role of negotiator to Dick. Dick was always better than she was at influencing their daughters. Father of the Year, coped with a difficult task. And now, for a few minutes later, the bathed girls were already sitting in the living room waiting for the traditional morning toasts with sweet tea. And how does he do it? Melanie wondered once again. She herself could not boast of such patience and diplomatic talent. And her sense of humor, which Dick actively used in communicating with children, refused her in the morning. Melanie completed her makeup by covering her lips with cherry gloss, admired the result a little in the mirror, and winked at herself. Yes, after all, he was lucky to have her as his wife, and he himself often said so. Never skimped on compliments and gifts. In all the 10 years of family life, Melanie thanked fate for Dick more than once. She felt good with him, calm and fun. But other colleagues often complained about their spouses, and Melanie even felt uncomfortable because she could not support such a conversation. After all, both Dick and her were satisfied with absolutely everything. It had been 10 years since the wedding, and he had proved many times in practice that Melanie made the right choice by becoming his wife. He was wonderful to her when they dated. She was a pretty girl, and at the time she had a lot of male suitors. But she did not experience the pleasant feeling of kinship of souls and confidence with the others as she did with Dick. Of course, Dick had minor flaws, but Melanie even liked it. Otherwise, she would feel too imperfect against the background of an ideal husband. For example, Dick was bad at remembering dates, even about the upcoming birthdays of his relatives, Melanie reminded him. So today, Dick forgot about the important holiday of the decade of their anniversary. But Melanie was not offended, because she knew the peculiarity of her husband and perfectly saw how important their family was to him. Melanie was expecting a call sometime around lunchtime when Dick finally called. She was looking forward to how he would blame himself for forgetfulness in a guilty voice and, of course, arrange some surprise in the evening. In the office, she was immediately wrapped up in business. It turned out that a check from Washington is expected the other day. Melanie was overwhelmed with work, so she skipped lunch. It was only in the late afternoon that she finally sorted out her urgent tasks and poured herself a cup of coffee. At that moment, her phone beeped. Melanie accepted the call without even looking at the screen, and she was sure it was Dick. I remembered their anniversary and called with congratulations. To hear a familiar and encouraging voice was just what was needed now. But a neighbor at the country house called, who lived next to them with her husband and children. They had daughters about the same age, and this brought the neighbors closer together, turning them into good friends. Families often arranged joint trips to the countryside, fishing, kebabs, and gatherings around the campfire. Such events were always fun and noisy. Melanie's friend Jenny started the conversation. "Hi, how are you doing? You sound really tired." "Hi, I'm just starting to have lunch at work," Melanie replied. "Wow, it's almost 5 o'clock. "Well, yes, it happens sometimes," Melanie said. "And how do you keep up with everything?" Jenny asked. She did not work, and she was busy with the house and children. "I don't understand it myself," Melanie admitted. "I don't even know how to ask," Jenny hesitated, clearly not daring to start a conversation on some awkward topic. "Do you need to borrow money? Don't be shy. Tell me how much you need, and I'll help you out," Melanie said. "No, that's not the point. Just wanted to ask. I wanted to ask," Jenny said. Melanie began to get annoyed and said, "I don't have time to talk for a long time. I need to have a snack faster and get back to work." "All right," Jenny decided. "Don't you live with Dick anymore?" "What?" Melanie almost fell out of her chair from the unexpected question. "What makes you think that?" "Well, he arrived in the morning," Jenny spoke excitedly. "Yes, not alone, with some woman and 2 children, and with a bunch of things. They were unloaded from the car for a long time, as if it's like moving." "I don't understand," Melanie whispered. "What things? What woman?" "Beautiful," Jenny said. "Full face of makeup, curvy, and smiling all the time. And your husband was talking to her incessantly, and also joyful. It looks like they're moving in together. I think they're going to live here. I thought he'd found another woman for himself, and even with children. I decided that you kicked him out of the apartment, so he came here with them all." "Jenny, I don't understand anything at all." "So you weren't even aware of it?" Jenny was surprised. Well, who would have thought? It's not like your husband at all. Let me send you a picture of them now, and you'll see for yourself." Melanie leaned back wearily in her chair. The conversation with Jenny seemed to knock her feet off the ground. Dick seemed to her the most reliable person in the world, and she was confident in him already more than in herself. And now this call. And ironically, on their anniversary. Maybe he brought his sister. Melanie seized on the saving thought. She just has 2 children, and with her husband, always quarreling, suddenly left him. Dick invited them to the country house to stay. He just didn't have time to warn her. Then the phone beeped again. The promised photo from Jenny arrived. Dick was in the picture, and a completely unknown woman was next to him. Indeed, a very spectacular lady was in the photo. He took out huge suitcases from the trunk, looked at the beauty with happy eyes, smiled. She, too, was clearly in high spirits. Tears came to Melanie's eyes, because she felt his full betrayal. If Dick decided to live with this woman, then everything has been going on for a long time. But as a wife, she didn't notice anything before. After all, there must have been some signs. Really, she is so naive. How can you not notice that her husband has a serious relationship on the side? In fact, the second family since they decided to live together. Melanie did not know what to do. At first, she wanted to call her husband and tell him that she knew everything, and then she decided to act more effectively. It was decided that she would go to the country house in person and make her unfaithful spouse and this destroyer of families feel guilty and humiliated. It was not easy to ask the boss for time off, but in the end, of course, he agreed. Okay, ghosts solve your family problems. You look like you've seen a ghost. You don't have any work today anyway. On the way to the country house, Melanie called her mother and asked her to pick up the girls from kindergarten. She most likely won't have time until 7 p.m. today, and the scene promised to be ugly and loud. After all, she was unlikely to be able to go for the children. Dick has already asked me to pick them up. Of course I will go for my granddaughters with pleasure, Melanie heard her say in response. That's how strange it is, she thought. Did Dick foresee this situation and take care in advance that the children were taken out of the garden during the time? Of course, he turned out to be a pathetic husband, but he still remained a caring father. Melanie drove without being careful on the road and almost got into an accident a couple of times because her thoughts were spinning in her head. Her world, which seemed happy, strong, and unshakable, was collapsing. How could he? What to do now, and why didn't she notice anything? Questions crowded in her head and did not allow her to concentrate on the road. Burning tears were coming to her eyes, and now she would join the ranks of grumpy, abandoned women, dissatisfied with life and men. Melanie used to think that we were to blame for our failures. They could not build a harmonious relationship with their spouses or somehow behaved incorrectly, and now she was one of them. At the beginning of the summer, Melanie and Dick allowed their daughters to decorate the high fence around the country house to their taste. They enthusiastically got down to business, and now the fence was covered with butterflies painted with acrylic paints on both sides, flowers and princesses. Seeing the creation of the children, Dick jokingly grabbed his head, and it seemed to her how cute everything was, and the pink beauty was unreal. Melanie, let's give our daughters a brother. Otherwise, we clearly lack in design, cars, and robots, Dick had joked. Brother, brother, the girls chanted then, clapping their hands. They obviously liked their father's idea, and Melanie didn't mind at all, and it wasn't scary with a husband like Dick, or that's what she thought. It's a good thing they didn't rush from plans to action. Otherwise, it would have been even harder now. This idyllic scene unfolded just a month and a half ago. Surely Dick was already secretly dating another woman. He had a relationship on the side and started talking about a third child? How could it have been 10 years to live with such a hypocrite next to her, and also consider him an ideal husband at the same time? Either she was completely stupid or her husband was a brilliant actor, one or the other. Melanie stopped at the neighbor's gate, got out of the car, with her heart pounding loudly, and approached her country house. Now she will have to ring her own doorbell as an outsider, and what if this woman opens it? Then what to do? But she didn't have to press the bell button. The door opened by itself. Dick hurried out into the street in shorts, a faded t-shirt, and old flip-flops. He had a package in his hands, apparently heading to a local store. When he saw Melanie, he was stunned and said, "What are you doing here?" With a confused smile, the man approached his wife and looked at her attentively and anxiously. "Did something happen? Why do you look like that?" He spoke softly. "Is everything okay with the kids?" I'm just going to see Jenny," Melanie lied badly. She could not begin the difficult conversation. She had thought out a heartfelt speech while she was driving, but now she saw Dick, and for some reason all the words flew out of her head. Dick was surprised and acted strangely. "You said you'd only take the tools for a colleague," Melanie reminded. "It's already evening and you're still here." "Yes, my plan has failed," Dick said thoughtfully. "I was waiting for you a little later." "What? Waiting?" "Yes, everything should have happened a little differently, but you know what? Well, it's okay. Wait a bit in the car, or at Jenny's, and I'll be right there." With these words, Dick disappeared through the door, not forgetting to turn the lock. Stunned, Melanie leaned against the fence. She did not expect such impudence, even in the current situation. Of course, her husband greatly disappointed her and made it clear that she was mistaken in him. But to slam the door in her face? To make her wait for something on the street? By the way, what was he doing? Morally preparing his new lover for a meeting with an angry wife? Melanie moved resolutely to the door. This was too much. Now she will face them both. She will bang on the gate until she gets inside, if necessary. She will climb over the high fence or call the police. Anger gave her strength and confidence. Just not to lose confidence again. Melanie had almost reached the door when it opened by itself. Dick was standing on the threshold, smiling. In a moment, he managed to pull himself together. The husband looked at her with a smile and held out his hand to her, inviting her into the garden. Melanie, who did not understand anything, looked around in surprise. The place was transformed beyond recognition. Garlands were hung everywhere. Tall figures depicting fairy tale characters could be seen here and there, and right under the spreading apple tree there was a table set for two. As soon as Melanie entered, beautiful music rang out. She turned around and saw 3 violinists in concert costumes next to the pool. And it seemed so amazing and unreal that Melanie was simply speechless. Dick was beside her, leading her by the hand to the table. The same woman came out on the porch of the house. She was the woman from the photo Jenny had sent her. She was wearing a long dress to the floor, and in her hands she was holding a microphone. "What's this?" Melanie managed to squeeze out. "This is my surprise for you, for us. I purposely pretended in the morning that I forgot about the anniversary as usual so that you wouldn't suspect anything. Everything should have gone differently. A white limousine would have come to work for you and brought you here, and on the way you would have changed into a dress like a princess. I chose it myself. I think you'll like it. I wanted to make this day fabulous and unforgettable for us." "You did this for me?" Melanie hugged her husband and tried to hold back tears. This time she wanted to cry from relief and happiness. And then there was a wonderful show in honor of the wedding anniversary. It was done by the woman from the photo. Live music, a magician, a guest singer. And then the children that Jenny saw performed an acrobatic performance. Melanie had changed her mind so much in the few hours since Jenny's call, but she certainly hadn't expected this. Later, when it got dark, there were bright fireworks. Melanie looked at the multicolored flowers blooming in the black sky, and she was happy again. Dick gave her a fairy tale. It's a good thing she didn't have time to ruin everything. Vanessa's childhood was happy and serene. She was a long-awaited and much-loved child. Her parents spoiled her and tried to spend all their free time with her. This family could rightfully be called ideal because love and harmony reigned in their home. However, happiness was interrupted by a series of terrible events. On that day, the parents of the young princess were going to the anniversary of a colleague and a longtime friend. The celebration was planned to be celebrated in the country house, which was 2 hours away from the city. Vanessa's parents were supposed to stay overnight in the country house. But suddenly, Vanessa's mom felt bad. She had a headache. They began to say goodbye to the subjects of the occasion and get ready for the road. It was pitch dark on the highway, and besides, the weather had cleared up on the street. A thunderstorm was brewing, and the rain poured down like a bucket. The thunder and lightning probably knocked out the power, and the lighting on the road was gone. They had to drive almost blindly. Almost at the entrance to the city, the car skidded and it flew into a ditch. Later, the examination would establish that Vanessa's mother died immediately, and her father remained alive for several more hours. If cars were passing by and someone had called an ambulance, he could have lived. Vanessa stayed with an elderly grandfather. She hadn't been told about her parents' death for a long time. When they reported that they were no longer on this earth, she withdrew into herself and did not speak to anyone for almost 2 years. Only the incredible efforts of her grandfather and boundless love for her only granddaughter were able to bring her back to life. Nicholas's life has been bright and eventful since childhood. His father was a first-class pilot, and due to the change of duty station, they often moved with the whole family. Nicholas liked these moves, although his mother was outraged every time and demanded that they settle somewhere for a long time. One day, her dream came true. At that time, his father was serving in Boston, and he remained there to serve. And Nicholas dreamed of New York. He had never been there before, but he really wanted to visit this amazing, bright city. When he graduated from university, he decided to try his luck and left for the city of his dreams. His parents tried to dissuade him, but to no avail, and he did not regret his decision. At first, he worked in a construction company and then organized his own company. The construction business turned out to be very successful and in demand. In a short time, Nicholas was able to build himself a house in one of the prestigious cities of New York in Brooklyn. Nicholas really wanted to take his parents to him, but his mother was categorically against it. She was tired of moving, and she was categorically against going to the city again. Nicholas's parents were pleased with their son's achievements. The only thing that upset them was that Nicholas did not have a family and children, even though he was already 40 years old. His parents' dream came true in the most unexpected way. Before the new year, Nicholas came to visit with a girl and introduced her as his bride. Vanessa was a very nice and pleasant girl, but one thing confused her family. She was 18 years younger than Nicholas. His father tried to talk to him and explain that this was too big an age difference, but Nicholas was stubborn. "Dad, I met the girl of my dreams. It's not my fault that my dream was born when I was already 18. We love each other, and that's the main thing." "What if she's with you for the money? You see how greedy young people are now." "I see, of course. But Vanessa is completely different. I'm sure of her." "Well, see that you don't have to regret it later. She will pull money out of you, and she will get a young admirer herself, and she will support you with your own money." "Dad, come on. I'm not 80 years old. I'm coping quite well myself. Let's close this topic. We came to visit, not to quarrel." "Okay, as you know, my job is to warn." Nicholas remembered this conversation only now, a year and a half after his wedding with Vanessa. The day before, the driver informed Nicholas that Vanessa was probably playing tricks on the side since she constantly goes to the same place. Nicholas couldn't believe it. He loved his wife very much, and he felt that she loved him too. Why would she do that? What might she be missing? Nicholas asked himself these questions. We have intimacy every day. I even get a little tired, but I understand that she has such an age that she wants to all the time. That this is not enough, I do not understand. Nicholas's thoughts were interrupted by the very culprit of these thoughts. Vanessa entered her husband's office and sat down next to him on the arm of the chair. "Nicholas, let's go out tonight. Come on. Where do you want to go?" "I don't know. I want to go to the movies. I haven't been to the movie in a long time. Do you mind?" she said. "I don't mind. Then I'll see where everything is shown and I'll get tickets." Vanessa kissed her husband on the cheek and flew out of the office. Nicholas watched his wife go. Well, it can't be that she has someone on the side, or I don't understand her at all, he thought. In the evening, they went to the cinema, then sat in a restaurant. When they returned home, Vanessa began to kiss Nicholas. After a while, he decided to ask, "Darling, tell me, do I suit you as a man?" Vanessa jumped in surprise. "What kind of stupid question is that? Of course you suit me, 100%. Do you doubt it?" "No, I just wanted to ask. We have an age difference, so maybe you're missing something." "Nicholas, what is this nonsense?" "Yes, you are better than any young man. Stop talking nonsense. I don't need anyone but you." Nicholas really wanted to believe his wife, but there was a worm of doubt inside that gnawed a hole. "Vanessa, can I ask you something?" "Ask me anything." "If you suddenly fall in love with someone else, or just stop loving me, don't lie to me. Just come and tell the truth, okay?" Vanessa was genuinely surprised by such a request. "Nicholas, you scare me with such requests. Did I give you reason to think so?" "No, just promise me you'll do it." "Okay, I promise, even though I don't understand anything." The next day, Nicholas had another conversation with the driver. "Tell me, are you sure that she goes to her lover? Maybe it's a salon of some kind, or a meeting with a friend." "I don't know," the driver answered. "Usually we go to the supermarket. She picks up groceries, and we go to the same address. She won't let me go up to the apartment with her, and she drags all the packages herself. It seemed strange to me, so I told you." Nicholas found this behavior strange. He didn't understand why she didn't take a driver with her if she was seeing just a friend. She probably doesn't want the driver to see who his wife is visiting. Therefore, she had something to hide. Nicholas was upset again. Yesterday he was sure that everything was fine with them, and now he began to doubt again. He asked the driver, "How often does she go to this address?" The driver replied, "Twice a week, maybe 3. Tomorrow she will go again. She's already warned me." "Okay, I'll figure something out. Can I take a video? You'll show her later and ask her where she goes." No, it definitely doesn't fit. I'll think about what to do. Nicholas thought all day and figured out what to do. He will make up and introduce himself as the new driver instead of Christopher. This is the only way he can check where his Vanessa goes. The next day, when Vanessa left the house, the car with the driver was already in the yard. She, as usual, got into the back seat and told the driver, "Please, let's go to Des Plaines. As usual, take me to the market on the way." "Good morning. Your driver is sick, so I'm his replacement," Nicholas said. "Where exactly in Des Plaines?" Vanessa, without even turning to the driver's voice and continuing to look out the window, corrected, Sorry, at 2257 Pinewood Drive. We'll stop at the supermarket before that on the way." "All right," the driver obediently said and drove off. Then everything happened as Christopher said. Vanessa went to the market and she was gone for 40 minutes. Then she loaded 3 huge bags of groceries into the trunk. When Nicholas put the bags in the trunk, he glanced at them briefly. Basically, there were dairy products, meat, sausage, cereals, vegetables, and a lot of sweets of different varieties. They drove up to the right house. Vanessa got out of the car. "You don't need to come with me. I'll manage on my own. Wait for me in the car." "I'm sorry, but I have to walk you out. The chief's order." And I said no. You don't need to. If Nicholas asks, tell him you escorted me. "But that's not true. I don't want to be out of work if the boss finds out that I didn't see you off." She was getting angry. "If you keep your mouth shut, he won't know anything," Vanessa said in a confident voice and got out of the car. She took the bags from the trunk and entered the entrance. A couple of minutes later, Nicholas got out of the car and also went to the entrance. He heard the door of the apartment on the 4th floor close. Nicholas thought that he would have to visit the owner of this apartment. Vanessa came out of the entrance about 50 minutes later. She was as calm and unperturbed as before visiting this house. The driver took the hostess home and drove to the same address, getting rid of makeup on the way. When he got to the right floor, Nicholas wondered which apartment to call. He was really scared now that his wife was a traitor, but he could not help but find out the truth. He reached out and pressed the bell of one of the apartments. No one opened the door. He went to another apartment and called. After a few seconds, I heard footsteps, then a grinding noise. The door opened. A man of at least 70 years old was standing on the threshold. "Hello, I'm from an insurance company conducting a survey. Can you spare me a few minutes?" Nicholas was making it up on the fly. Good afternoon. Yes, of course. Walk around." Nicholas went into the apartment. The man pointed to the living room and invited him to go there. Upon entering there, he immediately noticed several framed photographs of his wife. So, everything is correct, but it was just hard to believe that his wife was having an affair with this grandfather. "What did you want to ask?" "We are hosting a deal for single elderly people. We offer to issue a policy at a favorable price. Tell me, do you have relatives? Do you live alone?" "I only have a granddaughter, Vanessa. She doesn't live with me. She's married and lives with her husband. She is a very good girl. I raised her myself and helped her get on her feet. When my son and daughter-in-law died, she was only 6 years old. I couldn't send her to an orphanage. I decided I could handle it myself, and the two of us lived together. She recently got married for love, but to a rich man. And do you know what they are? Which ones?" Nicholas became interested. "Well, what? Important, intelligent." I immediately told my granddaughter, "Don't tell your husband about me. I don't want to be an obstacle to your happiness. She does not forget me, comes often, helps with food. I know she loves me, and that's good," he continued. Nicholas was surprised. So Vanessa thought he would be against her grandfather, or would he be embarrassed by her background? He already knew that she came from a poor family, and he didn't care. The main thing was that they love each other. He even felt offended that his wife had such an opinion about him. "Have you ever seen her husband? Are you not interested in who your only granddaughter lives with?" "I didn't see him, but Vanessa said he was a very nice person. She loves him, and he loves her, and that's the main thing. When there is love, young man, everything else is nonsense. Believe my experience." "What is your name?" "My name is Richard," the elderly man said. "Nice to meet you." "My name is Nicholas, and I am your granddaughter's husband. Just don't be angry with me. I accidentally found out about your existence. Vanessa didn't say anything. The driver who brings her to you told me." Richard narrowed his eyes and looked at the man with interest. He smiled and said, I guess he thought my Vanessa was going to the side, right? Well, she's not like that. She's honest and decent. I had no doubt. It was just interesting to understand where she goes so often. I wish you and Vanessa hadn't told me she had a grandfather. Although I am a wealthy person, I am not a greedy oligarch who considers other people to be trash. It is very good. Nice to meet you. Richard, I have a business proposition for you. Nicholas told his grandfather what he had come up with. Richard initially refused, but eventually accepted Nicholas's offer. Vanessa was cooking dinner when her husband called and said that today would be earlier than usual. Great! I'm so glad when you come earlier. We can talk more. I won't be alone today. We have guests, so set the festive table. This is a very dear and welcome guest. And who is he? Vanessa was surprised. Usually they warned about guests in advance, and they did not like unexpected visits. Honey, I'm driving. I'm not comfortable talking. I'll be there soon. You'll find out. I'll introduce you. Vanessa was an impatient girl, and she really disliked all sorts of intrigues and practical jokes. But there was nothing to do. We had to wait. She quickly set the table, cut a couple more salads, and ran upstairs to change. When Vanessa came downstairs in a beautiful dress, Nicholas was just entering the house. She ran up to her husband and hugged him. And where are the guests? She asked impatiently. The guests are already here, but I do not know how to properly introduce him to you. Nicholas was deliberately stalling. He knew that Vanessa was burning with impatience. It was his little revenge for what he had been through over the past few weeks. This man has done the impossible, and I respect him very much for that. Vanessa listened as if mesmerized, and she was very interested to find out who it was. Nicholas, can you introduce us already? What are you pulling? What did this man do that was so important? She was angry. Nicholas took Vanessa by the hand and led her into the yard to the car. What did this man do? Vanessa asked again, and walked over to the car. This man gave me the person most dear to me, you. Vanessa was stunned and looked at her husband. Then she pulled the door handle and saw her grandfather. She looked first at her husband, then at her grandfather, and did not understand anything. Nicholas, explain what's going on. How do you know my grandfather? Grandpa, how did you end up here? Richard got out of the car slowly. Vanessa, don't worry. We'll tell you everything now. Richard, take Vanessa and go into the house, and I'll take your things, Nicholas said. Vanessa didn't understand anything at all. They went into the house. As they sat at the table, Nicholas honestly told the whole story, starting with the driver's suspicions. During the story, Vanessa alternated between being angry, surprised, and laughing. In the end, she was glad she didn't have to hide anymore. Nicholas offered his grandfather to live with them, and he accepted the invitation. In the evening, when Grandpa went to sleep in another room and the couple were left alone, Nicholas asked, Vanessa, I just can't understand one thing. Why didn't you tell me that you have a grandfather? I don't know. At first, Grandpa asked me not to talk about you, and I agreed. Then somehow I couldn't tell him, and it would look strange, so I had to go to him secretly. I could not leave him in any way because he is my own family. I have no one else but him and you. Forgive me, Nicholas. I understand that it was stupid. Thank you so much for bringing Grandpa to us. Don't apologize. It's okay. Don't do it again. Otherwise, this understatement leads to such consequences. I had a bunch of gray hair added while I was figuring out what you were doing. I promise, Vanessa said, gently snuggling up to her husband.